Merhaba, sizleri Etnomüzikoloji Derneği Kurucu Başkanı ve Yönetim Kurulu Başkanı olarak selamlıyorum. Etnomüzikoloji Derneği olarak yaşadığımız bu olağan dışı pandemi döneminde etnomüzikoloji alanında ve etnomüzikolojiye yakın alanlarda çalışan amatör veya profesyonel araştırmacıları online platformda dahi olsa bir araya getirmeyi amaçladık. Bu fikri destekleyen, bizimle olan herkese çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sempozyumda bilimsel sunumların yanı sıra aynı zamanda alanında önde gelen isimler olan sanatçılarımızdan açıklamalı konserler de dinleyeceğiz. Bu anlamda başta davetli konuşmacımız olan JEFF TODD TITON'a ve birbirinden değerli ve yeni söylemleri olan çok kıymetli katılımcılarımıza, açıklamalı konserleriyle sempozyumumuza renk katacak olan sanatçılarımız DERYA, TÜRKAN, FARQANA QASIMOVA, NIKOS ANDRIKOS ve ERZİNCAN'a çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sizleri derneğimizin kuruluş yeri olan Bursa'dan, Bursa Karacabey ilçesine bağlı Eskikaraağaç köyünden selamlıyorum. Burası aynı zamanda Avrupa leylek köylerinden birisi. Leyleklerin göç yollarından geçerken sizleri de heybelerini alıp buralara kadar getireceği, birlikte karşılıklı çay kahve içeceğimiz, sohbetler edeceğimiz, fikirlerimizi paylaşacağımız nice sempozyumlarda, daha sağlıklı ve güzel günlerde buluşmak ümidiyle. Hoşçakalın.
Within ethnomusicology, where is ecomusicology? Music, sound, and environment. It is my pleasure to participate in the online ethnomusicology symposium, Past, Present, and Future of Ethnomusicology in Turkey and the World, for the Turkish Association of Ethnomusicology at the end of May in this year of 2020. I'm sorry that the global pandemic has forced this symposium online, but we must do the best we can under these difficult circumstances. It's my hope that something I say today will be helpful to you in your thinking about your work and your lives as ethnomusicologists. The novel coronavirus pandemic brought an immediacy to the gradually intensifying environmental crisis. Scientists now agree that habitat pressures that put different species that are not naturally close to each other in the same environment are causing unusual behavior among plants and animals. One result is the proliferation of novel viruses. Non-human nature, it would seem, keeps sending human beings messages, whether in the dreadful sounds of climate change or now in the wake of the terrible COVID-19 pandemic that threatens millions of lives worldwide. On the other hand, scientists have called attention to the positive environmental effects of mass confinements, quarantines, and lockdowns. Much less carbon dioxide is going into the atmosphere now. Shipping noise in the oceans is down, and whales and dolphins are communicating more freely. Environmentalists are hoping that the post-virus economy will accelerate the conversion to renewable energy systems. Does ethnomusicology have a role to play in the conversation swirling around the current environmental crisis? Of course, ethnomusicologists traditionally exercise what rights we have as private citizens, but does ethnomusicology as a field have a role to play? What, after all, are the relations between music and environment? By virtue of our training and experience as ethnomusicologists, do we have skills, knowledge, and expertise that gives us credibility in the embattled public sphere? Do we have standing as ethnomusicologists to contribute wisdom to policy making about the environment? We may recall the difficulties faced by the president of the Society for Ethnomusicology when he was interviewed on a radio talk show and asked to defend the Society's position statement condemning the use of music for torture. What ethnomusicology might do to help mitigate the climate crisis was the question addressed in the President's Roundtable at the annual conference of the Society for Ethnomusicology in 2018. Most of the 6 scholars who spoke to that question, myself included, considered the relations between the environment and music within the more inclusive category sound. Some said that among the skills ethnomusicologists brought to the table were people skills, developed over the course of fieldwork. A few of the speakers had backgrounds in ecological science and one advocated for partnerships between ethnomusicologists and ecological scientists to study the environmental adaptations indigenous peoples have made that could be useful in mitigating the climate crisis, thus lending some credibility to their contributions to the policy conversations about the environment. Some spoke about ethnomusicology's long-standing interest in the relationships between music and ritual and the environment, especially in traditional hunter-gatherer and horticultural social groups, where indigenous groups seek to influence the forces of nature to provide an abundance of food. Yet it was also plain that should ethnomusicologists bring to the environmental table the indigenous ecological knowledges of music and ritual, policymakers would respond that they wish to base their environmental interventions in science, not superstition. 5 of the 6 speakers on the President's Roundtable were active participants in an emerging multidisciplinary field called ecomusicology. Ecomusicology is a crisis field poised to address issues of music and the environment in a time of environmental crisis. Ethnomusicologists have played an important but not dominant role in developing ecomusicology. Among the study groups within the Society for Ethnomusicology, one is devoted to ecomusicology. In the remainder of this presentation, I will discuss this new field, ecomusicology, which combines scholarship, creative work, and environmental activism. For ecomusicology appeals to an increasing number of ethnomusicologists concerned with music and environment. Indeed, ecomusicology attracts musicologists, ethnomusicologists, environmental activists, acousticians, anthropologists, composers, performers, ecological scientists, and scholars in the field of sound studies. Each brings different perspectives, different concerns, different questions, different methodologies, and different analyses, and different interpretations to the discussion of music and environment. There is a study group within the Society for Ethnomusicology devoted to ecomusicology. There is also a study group within the American Musicological Society devoted to ecomusicology. On purpose, there is no society for ecomusicology, but ecomusicologists have held 2 major conferences in this decade. We have a journal called Ecomusicology Review, and we have an ecomusicology listserv. The field of ecomusicology coalesced in the 2nd decade of the current century under the guiding hand of musicologist Aaron S. Allen. As an undergraduate at Tulane, Allen had pursued a double major in music and environmental studies. As a PhD student in musicology at Harvard, he was directed to a traditional dissertation topic on Beethoven, while his professors left him to pursue his interests in music and the environment on his own time. Those interests blossomed after he began a teaching career in the Department of Music at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and sought out other scholars interested in music and the environment. Aaron Allen was centrally involved in 4 landmark ecomusicological publications in the 2010s. The first was a colloquy of articles under the heading Ecomusicology, published in 2011 in the Journal of the American Musicological Society, and the second was an entry defining ecomusicology in the Grove Dictionary of American Music, available to scholars since 2011, but published in 2014. Allen introduced the colloquy and wrote the Grove entry. Both publications were aimed at musicologists, and both drew on Alexander Redding's seminal review article, where he discussed recent works on music and nature under the heading Eco-Musicology. In them, he defined ecomusicology as the study of music, culture, and nature in all the complexities of those terms. Ecomusicology considers music and sonic issues, both textual and performative, related to ecomusicology and the environment. That was Allen's definition. After acknowledging, as Redding had discussed, the meanings of music and culture and nature were complex, unstable, and contested, Allen went on to explain that the eco in ecomusicology was not a reference to ecology per se, but rather to eco-criticism, a branch of literary criticism that had developed in the late 20th century and that emphasized relations between authors, literature, and the environment. Therefore, Alan went on, ecomusicology was best understood as eco-critical musicology, emphasizing relations between composers, music literature, and the environment. However, Alan soon recognized that defining ecomusicology as eco-critical musicology was too restrictive. True, he had taken pains to reference Charles Seeger's definition of musicology as the study of music in all its manifestations, rather than primarily as the study of Western art or classical music. Besides, the discipline of musicology had opened up in the past 30 years as the so-called new musicologists expanded the canon by exploring musical theater, jazz, rock, soul, and hip-hop music, as well as by elevating the careers of women and people of color who had been neglected as composers and performers. Musicology, like other academic disciplines, attempted to attract minorities into graduate school and as faculty members. Surely there was room for ecomusicology in the musicological tent. In his Grove Dictionary definition, Alan recognized ecomusicology's cross-disciplinary appeal to studies in soundscape and acoustic ecology, as well as biomusicology, that is, the study of animal sound communication, and an ethnomusicology that went beyond ethnographic description and interpretation to issues that were political and critical. At the first Ecomusicology Conference, which took place in October 2012 in New Orleans, the majority of attendees were musicologists. However, one could not help noticing that scholars, activists, and scientists who did not identify as musicologists were present as well, and that some were presenting their own research as ecomusicology. These included ethnomusicologists drawing on their field's long ethnographic engagement with music and cultural ecology. They included applied ethnomusicologists interested in harnessing concepts of sustainability to music and cultural policy. They included composers and performers whose music engaged directly with the environment. They included scientists interested in biomusic. They included public intellectuals and journalists synthesizing research in music and the environment. After the 2012 Ecomusicology Conference, Aaron Allen and his British colleague Kevin Daw determined to put together a book reflecting varieties of ecomusicological scholarship. This was the second landmark publication in ecomusicology of that decade. Drawing partly on presentations from the 2012 conference but not limited to them, the book, Current Directions in Ecomusicology, was published by Routledge in 2016 and became the third ecomusicology landmark of the decade. This ambitious and eclectic work was divided into two parts: ecological directions, fieldwork directions, critical directions, and textual directions. The book foregrounded four major, though not mutually exclusive, perspectives: ecological, ethnomusicological, eco-critical, including ethics as well as postmodern and critical theory, and textual, that is, engaging primarily with texts, usually from a musicological standpoint. Quote, "There is no one ecomusicology, but many ecomusicologies constituting a dynamic field," unquote, Allen wrote. Drawing on my own experiences at the 2012 conference, I came to view ecomusicology as a crisis field, and I defined it a little more broadly than Allen had done, as, quote, "the study of music, sound, culture, nature, and the environment in a time of environmental crisis," unquote. Allen and I had been corresponding about music sustainability, ecology, and the use of metaphors in ecomusicology since February of 2012. I had been writing about music and ecology decades prior to the invention of the term ecomusicology. In fact, Allen had critiqued my 2009 article in which I developed an ecological approach to musical sustainability based on applying principles borrowed from conservation biology to music and sustainability, for using ecology as a metaphor by bringing it out of the physical environment and into the world of cultural policy. I had also employed ecology as a metaphor, he said, in my 1984 claim that music cultures could be understood as ecosystems. Allen, in other words, made the important distinction between ecology as metaphor and ecology as science. He acknowledged that in my more recent work, I employed ecology directly in relation to the physical environment when I appealed on scientific grounds for a sound commons for all living creatures. However, the term sound commons is itself a metaphor, and in the sciences as in the humanities, metaphors have powerful explanatory qualities that are impossible to avoid, even in mathematics. Darwin cheerfully admitted that his phrase, the struggle for existence, was a metaphor. The tensions between the objective world of science and the subjective realm of metaphor greatly troubled Henry David Thoreau, the subject of my own contribution to current directions in ecomusicology. I view them as creative rather than destructive tensions. The music ecology metaphor was the object of critique in two articles, one written by Brent Keogh and the other by Keogh and Ian Collinson. They not only critique ecomusicology on those grounds, but also critiqued ethnomusicology, arguing that the music ecology metaphor was both misleading and also a distraction from more important inquiries into music as cultural production. At the same time, a critique of ecomusicology by ethnomusicologist Ana Maria Ochoa Gautier argued that ecomusicologists had failed to draw upon an earlier important strand in ethnomusicology exemplified by Stephen Feld's concept of acoustomology, referring to societies like the Kaluli of Papua New Guinea where sound played an outsized role in determining what humans could know and how they could know it, that is, in social epistemologies. Rather than responding immediately to these critiques, Aaron Allen and I decided that it would be best at first to respond indirectly by demonstrating in a special issue of a journal the variety of ecological approaches to music and sound. Our call for articles resulted in 55 proposals, far more than we thought we ever would receive. In 2018, 12 of those articles were published in a special issue of the journal Musicultures. Musicultures is the journal of the Canadian Society for Ethnomusicology. Actually, the Canadian Society for Traditional Music, excuse me. Topics included the indigenous cultural ecological knowledges and their relations to music and sound, human-animal cross-species interactions involving sounds and symbols, New Age atmospheric music and the environment, ecological psychology and phenomenology of musical performance, music culture ecosystems and the sustainability of symphony orchestras, and eco-critical musicology with an emphasis on compositions from an ecological viewpoint. All these demonstrated a variety of ecological approaches in ecomusicology. In the introduction to this special issue, Allen wrote that ecology provided ecomusicology with both a problem and an opportunity. For Allen, the problem of ecology was, quote, the invocation of ecology to mean something other than what ecological scientists mean by it. The opportunity, however, was in ecology's ability to inform, quote, other realms of inquiry that resonate with music and sound studies, unquote. In my afterword to this special issue, I wrote about two problems in contemporary ecology that presented difficulties for ecomusicologists. One was the change in the past century from the balance of nature paradigm to the disturbance and change paradigm. However, most ecomusicologists still consider nature and the environment to trend toward an ideal state of balance or equilibrium. The second problem is the ongoing debate within ecological science between population ecologists, who work from the bottom up, and ecosystem ecologists, who apply a systems approach and work from the top down. In the mid-20th century, ecosystem ecologists gained the advantage and held it for several decades, but their mathematical models were not nearly as accurate as been hoped, and as a result, not as many ecologists worked with whole ecosystems. Nevertheless, the ecosystem remains the principal metaphor with which ecomusicologists think about sustainability and music cultures, although to be sure, the music culture models that ecomusicologists have employed are descriptive and not mathematical. Certainly the music ecology metaphor has its limitations when yoked to the abandoned balance of nature ecological paradigm, as it was for the most of the previous century. Yet the contemporary science that accounts for ongoing relations among organisms and environment retains the idea that these do constitute systems, however temporary their equilibria may be after regime changes. In the same way, music culture ecosystems may be described in terms of non-totalizing dynamic relations among the parts and emergent unpredicted consequences in the behavior of the whole. Ochoa Gautier's argument that research by Feld and others foregrounded relations between music and the environment is certainly correct, but it is also true that much of the research in indigenous societies during the previous century focused on the ritual uses of music to ensure that nature would provide sufficient food and water for survival. However, this scholarly research appears chiefly as cultural ecology, and when first published, it lacked the present sense of a planetary environmental crisis, even though the environmental movement had been going on since at least the 1950s with Rachel Carson's work. More recently, Feld and others have revisited this early research from more of an applied standpoint, both with a sense of crisis and with a view toward cultural and environmental sustainability. But they do not identify their work as ecomusicology. The broad and growing appeal of music and ecology prompted Alan and me to turn the special issues. Let me start again with that sentence here. The broad and growing appeal of music and ecology prompted Alan and me to turn the special issue of music cultures into a book titled Sounds, Ecologies, Musics. In this book, not yet completed, we intend to further clarify the challenges posed and the opportunities offered when sound and music are considered from ecological perspectives. In the book, we seek to address two principal questions. One, what is the place and the role of music and sound in the crisis of the so-called Anthropocene? And two, how might ecological thinking help ecomusicologists to understand and mitigate this crisis? We invited a half a dozen additional authors to contribute, and after gathering up abstracts and submitting a book proposal, last winter, Alan and I signed an advance contract with Oxford University Press. The authors, including ourselves, are in the midst of writing our contributions. We're hopeful that within a few years, the book will be published. Ecomusicology, in sum, coalesced at the beginning of the current decade as the eco-critical study of musical. That is, the eco in ecomusicology referred then to eco-criticism, but today the eco also refers to ecology. The expanding eco invites ecologists under the ecomusicological tent, and it also encourages eco-ethnomusicologists to adopt an ecological perspective. This ecological perspective from ecomusicology offers ethnomusicologists an opportunity to contribute more directly and more authoritatively to the public discourse surrounding the environmental crisis, and to do so from a point of view that foregrounds the sounding universe in which humans and other animals are continuing to adapt their music and sonic communication in response to changes in habitat and climate. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the invitation to address you. I hope your conference goes well, and I hope that you may have some questions for me. If we're able to do this over the internet at the appointed time, I'll be happy to answer questions. Thank you very much again, and goodbye for now.